following the Planning Commission meeting. It's condition 12A that has been added to enforce the requirements for this CEQA exemption. There are findings that are required whenever a development plan comes before the council. These findings and the evidence of how the project meets the findings are outlined in the resolution. And at this point, staff recommends that you conduct a public hearing and adopt the resolution as outlined in the staff report. And I'm available for any questions. And we also have John Nicoletti here with Habitat for Humanity if there are questions for the applicant team.
Thank you for that presentation, Ms. Potocznik. At this point, public hearing for consideration of the Development Plan 23-02, Merrimack Village Apartments is now open. If there are any members of the public who would like to address the council on this issue, please provide your statement via public comment and state your name and address for the record. And we do have a card from, is it Matt Goody? Okay.
Good evening, council members and community. My name is Matt Goody. I'm the business manager for local Union 228 Plumbers and Pipe Fitters. We represent roughly 355 members in the community and approximately 50 apprentices. Local 228 has been around this community for next month, October 7th, it will be 118 years. I do not live in this community myself. I live in Red Bluff, California, Tama County. I have had the pleasure of working on the Sutter County courthouse when that was built. I also worked on the Sutter County jail expansion, and I've also worked at the Hard Rock Casino as a general foreman for the contractor on that. I'm here today to inform the council members and the public of the requirements of this project being exempted from CEQA. It does fall under the skilled and trade requirements of California, which were put out in January and took effect in January 1st, 2019. Simply states the skilled and trained workforce requirements are qualifications for the building and construction workforce that California law requires on certain projects. Contractors and subcontractors who violate skilled and trained requirements can face civil penalties up to $10,000 per month and disbarment, i.e. being prohibited from bidding on, being awarded, or performing work on public works contract. For these reasons, public entities, awarding bodies, bidders, contractors, subcontractors, and other skilled and trained covered entities should understand and comply with the skilled and trained workforce requirements. So I'm basically here just to inform the council members that this project does fall under the skilled and trained requirements. And I hope that those requirements are met so that I have an opportunity to push my members to work on a local project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comments on this item? Okay. Okay. Seeing none, I will, where we go? I'm closing it, right? Okay. Go ahead and close the hearing and bring it back to council for consideration.
This one, go ahead. All right, through the mayor, I move to approve staff's recommendation letter B.
Second.
I've got a motion from the vice mayor and a second from Councilmember Boomgarden. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you. Move along to business item number 12, consideration of general plan amendment, GPA 22-01 and rezone 22-02 associated with tentative map parcel map TPM 22-01 for the Ratliff duplex development. And this is presented by Mr. Ben Moody, Public Works Development and Service Director. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Thank you for the time this evening. You have me for a few here, so I'll work through them promptly. So what we have before you is the Ratliff duplex development. So it's a general plan amendment, a tentative parcel map was contingently approved at the Planning Commission, and there's a rezone to match the zoning. And so the applicant came to staff a while back, and it was to consider the development of a piece of property at the southwest corner of Frederick and Cooper Avenue. And so with that, the property is currently zoned. It's low density residential, but it's zoned as R2, which is the duplex zoning. And so with that development, they proposed to make it 3 parcels, to turn those 2 parcels into 3, and then to fit duplexes in a township and a kind of a townhouse development. And so I'll work through that here. So again, the subject parcels, 0.3 acres, so about 1/3 of an acre. And we went to the Planning Commission in May, where the Planning Commission considered and made a recommendation to the City Council for the general plan and the rezoning with an overlay district to allow for the various setbacks that I'll get to you in the lot coverage. And then also it tentatively approved the parcel map. And so what we're doing is changing these colors on the map and to allow a little tighter development is really what it's come down to, which really is it coincides really with that zoning audit. And so we have a duplex zone property, but it's what they've asked is to go through the city's current processes to allow it to be a little more dense. And so in order to go through the city's current processes, you have to change the land use and the zoning to allow that through this overlay zoning. And so with the map, again, it's currently R2. What we're proposing is R3 with this combining district, this overlay district. And what really that does is it puts a duplex on each of the 3 lots. So we're creating 2 lots, we're turning them into 3 lots. We're allowing a duplex to be on each lot, thus reducing the square footage. So that 6,000 square feet, it's down to about 3,900 square feet. And then your lot coverage is reduced from 40% to 50%. And then you have the rear yard setback that's reduced in order to allow those properties to happen. And so with staff review, we've looked at it. The property's been vacant for quite some time. It's a residential area. It's near the high school. We really look at it as a compatible use with multifamily to the east, with with single family to the south, and then being in kind of an infill site on how to make this work. And so at the Planning Commission, there was some talk about concerns about parking in that area. Over the years, there's always issues with parking around the high school. And so there was discussion that came up regarding with this development, anything that comes in will have to meet the current parking standards, where they'll have to be built with on-site parking. And then there's also the street parking associated with that development, should it be changed. And so I don't know how much I could add to this. Really, we got a vacant parcel. We got it currently zoned as R2, 2 parcels zoned as duplex. What they're proposing is to make it a little more dense, 3 lots, 3 duplex parcel, 3 duplex development, in order for it to really kind of pencil out and move forward with a project. And the city staff reviewed it. We looked at those setbacks and looked at the design standards, and we think that a good project that fits the community will fit. And then also we looked at it for traffic. It's really in the downtown with an additional duplex. Yes, there will be additional trips, but we don't believe that's anything that will cause an issue with the existing developed streets. So environmentally, we've reviewed it. There's no evidence in the record the proposed project will have a significant effect. And with that, we're proposing a mitigated negative declaration. And based on staff's analysis, public necessity, general welfare, warrant approval, the city staff recommends approval of the planned amendment as outlined in the resolution. The applicant's representative is here tonight, so he could definitely go into any details regarding timelines, what the development's proposed to look like, and any specifics regarding the project. And so with that tonight, I recommend you conduct a public hearing and then adopt the resolutions and introduce the ordinance per the staff report. And I want to highlight a specific part of this resolution tonight is that with general plan amendments, the city's allowed 4 per year. And so currently we've already passed 2 with our housing element and with the change to the area along Spirit Drive and Highway 20. And so with this, what we're requesting is that it's contingently approved because we have this proposed general plan amendment. The next item is a proposed general plan amendment. And then the next item, we're going to package those together and consider them together. And so that's a common process that's handled in California. And we're recommending that tonight to provide capacity. So we still have one more general plan opportunity should both of these be passed tonight. So then that way we have an opportunity to consider a general plan amendment for the rest of the year. And I'd be happy to answer any specific questions.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. The public hearing for consideration of the general plan amendment GPA 22-01 and rezone 22-02 associated with the tentative parcel map TPM 22-01 for the Ratliff duplex development is now open. There is a written request by Heather Sims Goodland.
Thank you for.
Can you state your name and address, please?
My name's Heather Sims Goodland at 591 Gabriel Avenue. Thank you for the opportunity to talk. I'm sorry I wasn't at the planning meeting because we had our mail forwarded and we didn't receive it until after the planning meeting was already over. But for the past 45 years, my family has owned the 3 apartment complexes that border the proposed site, as well as another apartment complex that is like catty corner, less than a half block away. So I'm very familiar with the neighborhood and I have good relationships with all of the neighbors, and we care a lot about this property. For us, it's not just an investment. We're really invested in it. We bought it from the original Cooper family, who the street was named after. We bought it. Her parents built the house. So, to say we love it would be an understatement. And so on behalf of my family and the neighbors in this community, I'm asking the council not to approve a zone change and a setback change. And I actually have a petition signed by many, many neighbors, which I think you might have a copy, who are requesting that this zone change not take place as well. I am pro-business and I do want the city to grow, but this is not an appropriate site for a zone density change. It's right next to the high school. And because this lot has already been zoned R2, it's already allowed to have like 60% higher density than what's typically allowed in a low density residential neighborhood. The developer just wants, obviously, more money. But the proximity being so close to the high school, it's less than 1 block away from the high school. It is so congested already. There are times when further down the street, I cannot put out 3 garbages spaced enough so that Recology will come pick them up, because I can't put them 3 feet apart because the streets are totally clogged with cars. In fact, Frederick Street, which is the street that directly borders the property, they already have limited parking. There are signs up, but you can only park there for 2 or 3 hours or with a permit. So that goes to show you parking is a big issue in this area. An area that has signs like this is not a good area for a zone density increase. Even if you just divided it into 3 separate lots and you had 3 new driveways, even that takes away a lot of the parking which is used. If you drive by that area during any given day, every single space is taken up around the vacant lot. So even just taking those away will create a hardship on the community. And adding extra car trips to an area that already has hundreds of extra car trips each day from high school traffic is not safe. It's not safe for the kids. It's a horrible area for this to be done. Increases in density cause increases in crime, and that's not what we want next to the high school. One extra duplex is not going to matter very much in the housing crisis, but it will devastate this neighborhood. There are many other vacant lots in town. In fact, there are 3 other vacant lots on B Street just a half a mile away. And if you have to change so many rules, if you have to change the setback requirements and the amount of space that a lot or a building can cover and the size of the lot, it's probably not the right site for the project because this community is already so congested. There are so many, we have so many problems with crime just from the high school. This will just create this tight little enclosed space for kids to come and hide and smoke and just, do whatever. I think 2 duplexes is more than enough in this neighborhood, and all of the neighbors, every single neighbor that I spoke to did not want this to happen. So I urge you to please not rezone this parcel.
Thank you. I also have a speaker card from Curtis Henderson.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for that. That's the reason why I'm here today. Took the words right out of me, so thank you. I live there on B Street. As a matter of fact, I missed you the other day when you came around. She's absolutely right. To give you a little backstory, my great-great-grandfather was Frederick Cooper. The family's been here a long time. That house that I currently live in, I inherited 2 years ago with the passing of my father. We've been there since it was built, 87 years in that house alone. And Frederick Street is horrible. Every morning when I'm going to work, there's too many cars. The students are always taking up parking spots, adding more residences on that vacant lot. It's just going to make it that much worse. And sitting here, listening to the audit presentation and seeing the densities, I can't fathom putting that there because what everybody's saying, what you said is absolutely right, that it's going to make it that much more condensed, that much more crime. In the last 2 years that I've been living there full time, let alone my whole life, 29 years, I've had countless calls to Yuba City Police Department. I had a 2 a.m. wake-up call. Somebody had started a fire in my front yard. Constantly having people cut through, trespassing students. There was stuff left over from students, a little afternoon delight, unfortunately. I mean, it's just constant, and something needs to be changed. And I don't think adding more residences there with these duplexes is going to do any bit of good. I've had too many issues in the last 2 years, and I disapprove of this plan in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further comments from the public on this item? Please. State your name and your address for the record, please.
I'm Kay Sims, and my address is 1018 Hillcrest Avenue in Yuba City. And one of the things I wanted to mention that the proposed zoning setbacks. Now there's 25 feet setback required. They're asking for us to have 9 feet. it would be too crowded. We have one of our apartments, there's about 8 or 9 feet between where the end of it is and the property line is. And so that could give us maybe 15 feet between us and the next building, which could lead to problems with, if there's a fire, for sure, ours might have a problem catching or getting another one. It looks bad, it's dangerous. The kids go back by some of ours to do their smoking. And if there's more buildings around there, they're gonna be covered more. They like to hide and find places. We've had some vandalism problems also with our places where students have broken in. One of the groups was caught on video camera, so the high school was able to get those students and have them disciplined. There's tenants. We have real strong criteria for our tenants to make sure that they are going to keep the places nice. It's quiet. I think that this would be a problem. It would increase the problem with them with noise. One of our tenants has been there 40 years. There's several of them been there for 30 years because we keep them well maintained and we have strict standards on the tenants we're going to get. I'm afraid that we might lose some of our tenants if we have as many places proposed. There's also, if we knew that there was zoning changes that could be done on the places, or that there would be some of these limitations, we would have bought the property a long time ago just to protect it. But we didn't know that. We didn't know that you could change zoning, or I guess we didn't examine it because we just knew that we expected to have 2 duplexes built sometime, but we didn't protest it. So the only ones I could see that this zoning change would help is the developers and all the neighbors. You know, Heather and I went around to the neighbors to get signatures, and everyone disapproves. It's just, I don't know what else to say. I've been the owner for 45 years. So we've seen lots of changes, but we didn't want to see 3 different sets of duplexes go in. 2 we can understand, but not 3. And no changes in the zone. So, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further
I'm Ron St. John, live at 526 Cooper Avenue, which is, if you look at the map, just north of there, the house with the red roof, tile roof. Lived there for 43 years, and that has been a vacant lot. If you look at the lot itself right now, it's 60 feet wide and 190 feet long, and you divide that into 3 lots, you have an area about the size of this room that you're going to put a driveway, 2 parking spots, and a duplex on. How are you going to work that in there without it being right up to property lines and stuff? That's just not big enough for the driveway, the parking, plus the building. Second thing I have is, and this is for Mr. Moody, correct? all the underground in that area has been there for well over 40 years. Where are you going to tie in the water main to supply water to that house, those duplexes? Where's that water coming from? Okay, there is some new water mains put in. The other thing is where's the sewer going to go? Frederick Avenue is just a 6-inch sewer main. It's designed for maybe 2 single apartments or houses there. You put in 6 of them. What's it going to do to that line? Is that line going to be able to handle it, or are you going to have to put in a new sewer main to handle that? Because we're at the end of the line, that starts backing up. Pretty soon it's going to be in our house. So I see it keeping maybe the 2, as Heather asked. Please don't go 3. I just don't see the high density being able to handle that right there in that area. We're smaller houses, single family. Let's keep it that way, the integrity of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further public comment on this item? Any further public comment? Okay. Go ahead and close discussion and bring it back to council for further comments.
All right, through the mayor. We have had that presentation earlier today about the need for more dense housing and increase opportunities for folks to live in. We're going smaller lots, smaller dwellings is becoming the trend now. We need to find opportunities for that to happen. However, I hear you, and I haven't driven by that, I will admit, in a long time. But I think based on what I've heard today, these signatures here, the fact you folks came in here to talk about this, and you've made a good point. I do disagree that because you add 2 more front doors, that all of a sudden crime's going to go through the roof. That's a big reach. I understand you're looking for bullet points, and it all sounds good, but the reality is not necessarily, and probably not even likely. However, I think with given that street, the narrowness and the traffic pattern, everything that was said, it doesn't sound like it can get much worse already, even adding even the 2 duplexes. But I would think that, and with all due respect to the Planning Commission, they did their job. They brought forth a recommendation. They looked at the facts and looked at everything, and they did their job and sent it up to us. And now it's time for us to make the decision. And we make those decisions based on what we hear and what we see. And we've heard and saw a lot today. I would be in favor of honoring the request to keep it at 2.
Through the mayor.
Mm-hmm.
I just have a couple questions still. All of this has been predicated on on-site parking, right? So whether it's 2 duplexes or 3 duplexes, there is on-site parking, or did I not hear that?
Yes, absolutely. So the code regarding on-site parking would still stay in place. So when the design would come to us, it would have to be laid out and proposed to us to be built with on-site parking. So there'll be a driveway, there'll be a garage, and then basically enough to handle 2 parking spaces. And so, is it tight? Yes, it is. And then there's been ongoing issues with the school, and there's been talk in the past, and maybe it's time to revisit a parking program related to the neighborhood regarding the school's impact to that is a different option on how to handle some of the parking. And I would say again, being a vacant lot for over 40 years, there's a lot of vagrancy and a lot of crime issues associated with the vacant lot. And so this was proposed as an option to be a feasible development.
Thanks for that. I do appreciate the opportunity to hear that the on-site parking would be there for 2 as well. I am familiar with the neighborhood. Actually, I think there was a fire across the street way back when. Maybe you guys owned the apartment complex then, but anyway, okay. I'm with the vice mayor. The city has a desperate need to provide affordable housing, and by affordable, I don't necessarily mean subsidized housing, but housing that's affordable. And what this would do would be to provide some housing at a lower market rate probably than a single family dwelling would be. But I, along with the vice mayor, do hear the community. Again, being familiar with that location, placing 3 duplexes in there on that piece of property doesn't look to me like that would be the right thing for us to do in that existing neighborhood. And I'm very sensitive to that fact. We can always be accused of not in my backyard, but I also think that there's been some credible points being made here, plus our own experience of that particular location. So along with the vice mayor, I do appreciate the Planning Commission's work on this. I think they're trying to do what they have been tasked to do, which is take a look at a proposed development and see if it merits any kind of a recommendation going forward from us. And I'm going to agree with my vice mayor here. I think we keep it at 2. And I hope that when the 2 comes up, that does alleviate some of those problems there with the vagrancy on that vacant lot, because it's not always been crime-free either, even as a vacant lot. I'm pretty familiar with that as well.
Thank you for that. So I would like to thank the community for coming out in force on this and doing the legwork. It's amazing to hear some of the stories of, and this isn't the first time this has happened in this body, the investment in the community and the fact that you folks have lived in that area for so long, going back to the folks named, the streets are essentially named out of. So you're definitely invested in it. You're familiar with the area. You know, you've got a high school there. You know, there's issues that come. I graduated from that high school, believe it or not. And I'm very familiar with that area. And I know how impacted it can get during school and when there's not school going on. And that goes for even down at the Playhouse down the street when they have the plays down there as well. This body constantly gets requests for more housing, because we all know that is a huge issue in this community and in this state. And but it's not always the right fit. And I think that's this is one of those situations where it's probably not the right fit. And I would agree with my colleagues that I think we need to keep it at 2. So we're going to go ahead and call for a vote on this.
Through the mayor, if I may. If the city council is inclined to deny this, my recommendation is that you would direct staff to come back with a resolution of denial for final approval at the next meeting. That way we can put together a formal resolution, have the appropriate findings, and make sure that we've documented in the record very well the reasons why the council's denying this project.
Do I need a motion to do that?
Just direction to staff to come back with a resolution of denial.
Okay. So do you have your direction?
I have the direction.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Moody.
And through the mayor, I'm guessing that's a 3-0 vote?
Yes.
Okay, I'm seeing 3 nods. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank the folks that came out and spent the time to express their concerns. Hopefully you got a chance to see your government at work. And so, yeah. Moving along to item number 13. I'm sorry. If anyone would like to leave at this time, you're welcome to. Thank you. You folks have a nice evening.
Long night. Yeah, it's all right. Okay.
Okay, moving along to item number 13, consideration of general plan amendment GPA 23-02 and rezone 23-02 for the Baines Bridge Street project. Once again, presented by Ben Moody, Public Works Development Service Director. The floor is yours, sir.
Okay, so a somewhat similar item, different location and a little bit different configuration. And so the item before you is regards to the consideration of the following planning entitlements. So it's an environmental assessment, the general plan amendment, and then a rezone associated with that. And so for the Baines Bridge Street project is how staff's identifying this location. So it's just west of Walton, on the north side of Bridge Street. The project's 0.68 acres. No development is proposed with this project. It's really changing that color on the map. And there's some existing improvements that are going on right now that I'll highlight. So a little history. In July of 2019, a tentative subdivision map, 1903, was approved by the Planning Commission. And then on October of that year, there was a general plan amendment and a rezone for that associated with that map. And so, and then recently in 2023, the Planning Commission considered an application to change that recent rezone. And so basically there's a commercial office property that was designated that historically has been there. And so what they're trying to do is get rid of the commercial office and then merge that into the adjacent high density. And so what we have here is this square shaped parcel. It's definitely a mix of land uses. And so you have the single family homes on the west side, and then you have some R2, some duplex type or higher density type uses in the middle. And then you had an R3 up in the northeast corner, which was for apartments. And then it had this commercial office. And so what they're proposing tonight is really to basically get rid of the commercial office and expand the multifamily. And so basically it's expanding the potential of an apartment site at this location. And so R3 zoning, it's 12 to 36 dwelling units per acre. But again, with development, standard setbacks, road improvements, the density, it would most likely be in the middle of that range. And then, so that was the land use with the general plan amendment. And then, so the zoning, it would be proposed with it to also be updated to coincide. So that CO would go to R3. Compatibility with neighboring uses. And so you have the R3 to the north, you have the proposed higher density duplex to the west, and then you have some single family, existing single family on the south side of Bridge Street. With that development, most likely it would be loaded and accessed via the new road. There's a U-shaped road that's under construction through that development right now. And so any sort of development that had to do with these apartment complexes in the future would most likely be loaded in and out from this road to avoid how that interacts with Bridge Street. When we looked at the traffic, again, you may have heard this with past projects, but when we're changing the color on the map, we typically look at the most extreme example of commercial office, and you look at the extreme use of the R3. Until the development actually comes in and we see what those impacts are, it's hard to compare apples to apples. So if you look at the extreme situations of commercial office and R3 for that size parcel, they have real similar traffic demand for the commercial versus the R3. There's some time of day changes possibly, but we don't see with Bridge Street and with the size of this parcel that it's a major difference on the traffic. So with that, staff looked at this for environmental compliance, and it was determined there's no evidence in the record the proposed project will have a significant effect on the environment. So with that, based on staff's analysis, public necessity, general welfare, staff is recommending that City Council consider changing this general plan land use and zoning. Additionally, the applicant is here who could answer any questions regarding timing or his plans for the project. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Public hearing for 13, consideration of general plan amendment GPA 23-02 and rezone 23-02 for the Baines Bridge Street project is now open. If there are any members of the public who would like to address the council on this issue, please provide your statement via public comment and state your name and address for the record. Do we have any comments from the public on this item? Any public comments? Seeing none. We will go ahead and close and bring it back to council for discussion or action.
Through the mayor, Mr. Moody, there was some discussion earlier by a member of the public about a specific, can you clarify whether?
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I would have brought that up. And so from what I heard from the public, it had to do with this project being off of Bridge Street and west of Walton. And he had some concerns about storm drain, road repair. And so with this project, those city standards would have to be built. And so there would be curb gutter, sidewalk, storm drain, to facilitate any runoff from the site. streetlights and built with landscaping setbacks to city standards. And so with that, I'm not sure, the road, with his comments, the road components and the infrastructure should be handled with the development per existing code standards when that comes. Regarding additional traffic, that's to be seen.
What about the Section 8 reference?
Yeah, I've not heard anything regarding Section 8. I sometimes when people hear R3 in apartments, that's a standard assumption, but there's been no indication from the applicant that it's any other than a market rate housing.
Appreciate the clarification. Thanks.
Just a quick question, clarification, Ben. We talk about roadway improvements associated with this project, curb, gutter, sidewalk. Would that also encompass the south side of Bridge Street? I believe that's where that gentleman lives with the drainage issues.
It would not, and so the developer they're required to do their frontage and then to pay into impact fees associated with the project. And so regarding curb, gutter, sidewalks on the south side, ultimately that would have to be a city-led project and prioritized.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. I'll entertain an action from council.
Through the mayor,
Yes.
we may be able to save you some time on the next agenda item. And the reason is we were going to do the general plan amendments and then do a final approval with the next agenda item. But since the Ratliff property is going to apparently be denied by the city council, we only have one. So if we make some tweaks to this resolution on the fly, we can actually skip the next agenda item if you're willing to do that. Okay. If that's the case, the changes would be to the resolution to remove whereas number 9 in its entirety, remove the word contingently from whereas number 10, and then in section 5, just keep the first full sentence. So anything where it says this is contingently approved is deleted. And with that, that will be sufficient.
So I will make a motion to adopt the resolution as amended by our city attorney.
I've got a motion from Councilmember Boomgarden and a second from Vice Mayor Harris.
And Councilmember Boomgarden, would that also include item C to introduce an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Yuba City to adopt rezone 2302 for the Banesbridge Street project located on approximately 0.68 acres on the north side of Bridge Street, approximately 300 feet west of Walton Avenue, Assessor's Parcel number 580805?
Of course it would.
He's good.
Thank you very much.
He's good.
So I've got a motion from Councilmember Boomgarden and a second by Vice Mayor Harris. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Motions carry. Thank you, Mr. Moody. We're moving along to, we're at 15? Okay. Item number 15, CBG 2022 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report presented once again by Ben Moody.
All right. So moving on to housing part of development services. And so what I have before you tonight is really the annual report regarding our CDBG program. And so our analyst, Shannon Jones, Shannon Sardo, helped put this together, and she's online to help answer any specific questions as we work through this. And so, again, annually, it's called the CAPER. The city is required to put a notice out and then receive feedback regarding how we're doing and how we're spending our how we're doing on spending our CDBG money. And so the CAPER tracks the city's progress in utilizing these funds that are programmed each year in the program year to meet housing and community development goals outlined in our 5-year consolidated plan. And so in program year 2022, staff council authorized the allocation to various programs, the Yuba-Sutter Homeless Consortium, the Plaisium, Gleaners Food Bank, Freed, Habitat for Humanity, Senior Center Bathroom, Sam Branham Safety Improvements, a fire station, sign and bathrooms, sidewalk repair assistance, sewer lateral, and an ADA public facility improvements project citywide. And so all of those projects are in various state of spending the money. Where many of them are completed as far as the housing rehabilitation funds, where Freed is used 18,700, And you have approximately the homeless consortium has used their 50,000, and like Gleaners is used the majority of their funds, and where we have the Playseum that's used their funds. And then when you get into some of the public facility improvements, the projects, there's still work going on behind the scenes to make those happen. The ADA sidewalk, it's a big project with a big number out there. The construction's actually been awarded, and it's come to City Council with the contractor expecting to start as early as next week to mobilize and spend that. And so where we had some money sitting on that multi-years, you're going to see a big movement on this 244,000. The contract is actually for 450,000 total, where you're going to see this program year get cleaned up and then another program year to kind of move that money off the books. And so with the CAPER, we're required to do public outreach, where we send out a 15-day public comment period starting September 6th. It goes out in both English and Spanish to the Peel Democrat and also to social media. And as to date, we've not received any feedback. And so with that, I recommend we conduct a public hearing and then approve the 22 CAPER as presented. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. Public hearing for CDBG 2022 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report is now open. If there are any members of the public who would like to address the council on this issue, please provide your statement via public comment and state your name and address for the record. Do we have any comments from the public on this item? Seeing none, we will close and bring it back to council for action or comment.
Through the mayor, I'd like to move to approve the 2022 CAPER and adopt a resolution authorizing staff to submit all necessary documents to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Second.
I've got a motion from Councilmember Boomgarden and a second from Vice Mayor Harris. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Moody.
Okay. So
I'm sorry. Item number 16, burn damaged building abatement, presented by Ben Moody. Floor is yours, sir.
All right. Nearing the end here. So burn damaged building abatement. And so Doug Libby, he's at training today, so I've stood in, but he brought this item before you in July. And so this is a follow-up based on that meeting and direction from City Council. And so really, we're just diving into a little bit of the additional information, and please feel free to ask me any questions as I work through it. So a little background: an updated public nuisance ordinance was adopted in September 2020 that put into place this vacant building plan process. And so some key components is the city manager designee may issue or order a property owner to submit a vacant building plan within 30 days. And then we could require that plan be implemented within 180 days or such other time. So we can narrow that timeline down. Real quick on the typical code enforcement options for these burnt vacant buildings. You have option one, which is the traditional code enforcement, where you receive a complaint, you go out there, you issue them a citation, you issue them a notice of violation, you tell them, hey, you got blight, you need to clean it up. You give them a certain amount of time, and then citations start. Many times that's not effective for abatement buildings or for burnt buildings because of the ownership, the state of disrepair, and usually the property owner is just not wanting to claim, or they're tied up with insurance or various issues with the title of the property. And then you have option two, a demolition and cost recovery. The city does have an option where if it's a safety hazard, the city could go in there and correct that safety issue, and then look to put a lien against the property and recover that over time. Or you have this receivership where you work with a third party to act to do that work, and then they take a cut of the profits in order to facilitate that work. Again, the abatement challenges is property owner motivation of where it's at and who owns it, and usually there's just no money there. There's no value left in the house, and so they're trying to figure out what to do. And so if you already have a negative value property, if you go slap citations onto that property, it doesn't motivate them like you would see typically for another type of code enforcement. There's utility company delays, removing infrastructure prior to demolition. The property insurance, there's property insurance issues as far as the amount cover the cost to replace. Delays resulting from insurance adjuster processes, availability of design professionals for building plans and what it takes to do that, and then just ability of contractors to make it happen timely. So the feedback we heard from council on the 18th is determine the number of first responder service calls. So there was a list provided when we coordinated with the Yuba City Fire Department where they keep track of a burned building, a burned property list that they provided to us. And so since then, staff really went through that list to update it as far as, okay, what's the status of each of these properties and where are they at? And then we also looked at the number of first responder calls to see if we could prioritize those. We provide a status of the vacant building plans. And so my next slide, and also in the staff report, attachment 2. So we took that list and staff went through it and we were able to weed some of them off. Some of them were just vacant property. Some of them have been corrected. And so they brought that list down to about 17 properties. And then where staff has been working to implement vacant building plans going forward. And so with that, Code Enforcement Officer Lincoln Eden's here too, that could help provide any insight if there's any specific properties or kind of our processes on that. Then also we looked at funding options. And so staff coordinated with the CDBG rep and HUD just to find out, hey, is there funding opportunities through the CDBG program that if we wanted to set aside some money or apply for money through the CDBG program, can that be done? And the answer is yes, in specific areas. So if you're in that low income census tract, yes, demolition and property abatement of blighted property qualifies for CDBG funding. In order to do that, staff would have to apply for it, and then city council would have to consider that as an allocation each year for those, and they would have to be used for qualifying properties. And then we did a little research on just what's the typical cost to abate a fire damaged building, and really what we found, it's anywhere from $45,000 to $100,000, and it really comes down to, is it a carport, is it asbestos, how old is it, and with the city getting involved in prevailing wage rates, I could see where you need a budget probably $100,000. You know, some of them might be $50,000, but you have probably staff time and legal fees associated with that. And then, you know, some might be a little bit more and then over time, but I would recommend a budget number of probably close to $100,000 per parcel. This is hard to read. I'm sure it's attachment 2 in your in the staff report. But one of the big takeaways is the calls for service. And so I'll click through it real quick, but you have Becky Lane, 2061 Becky Lane. It looks like there was a burn in December of 2020. They have 10 calls for service. For reference, for Honor Oak, 1335, there was 18 calls for service. Those are our 2 highs. And then we have some at 6 with Alomar Way. And then on the side, we've updated to see where the status is. And so we've with the change in policy for staff is that when we receive this, when we receive the notice of burn notice, the staff will then move forward, code enforcement staff will then move forward to implement a vacant building plan and then put pressure on the property owner that it can't be left how it is. And so we don't have 2 different arms of the city where you have the fire and PD responding and code enforcement not knowing about it, is so that when we hear about this notice through fire department, through their red tag policy, they notify building. And so building is now going to coordinate with code enforcement. So then that puts the wheels in motion on the code enforcement side, not just wait for a neighbor to complain at some future date. So really what I have with this presentation is that some recommendations to formally have council implement a policy to initiate a vacant building plan provision of the city's public nuisance ordinance within 30 days, so that it basically puts it formalizes it. And it's not just staff saying, hey, we're going to do it. It's that, hey, we're going to formalize this policy that within 30 days, if a burn property comes in, we're going to request that they be put on a vacant, staff's going to put them onto a vacant building plan. Direct staff to annually apply for community development block grant funding. do the budget process and look at that. So as part of that $600,000 plus that comes to the city, we could put in an application so it's at least considered every year if that's a potential, how we prioritize that funding if there's some funding available to put into that property abatement capital improvement project. And then direct staff to review and recommend funding options through the 24-25 budgeting cycle for other potential abatement or blighted buildings. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, or if you want to work through any of the specific sites as far as what their status is.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. Do we have any comments from the public on this item?
Heather Esselman again. I know the owner of 2nd Street, so I think everybody knows the building on 2nd Street that there was a fire. It's beautiful old, not Victorian, something like that. Yeah, that one. So they would love to get started with that. They're having problems with the insurance. So whatever you do, please just, if you have to make a separate niche for, because this is not a low income area. It's all those old houses right there. It's right next to, I think everybody knows that one. The one over off 2nd Street across from the old courthouse and how that burnt down. There is a house behind it. They're trying to get that settled with the insurance company. Last time I talked to them in July about it. So like I said, whatever you decide, just keep that in mind, because forcing them to do something where they would have to pay a higher fee because the city doing it would cost more than them going out and finding somebody. I mean, I don't know how much it would cost to take that sucker down, because that's big if they decide to demolish it. So it's not like a single, it's not like some stick thing that they put up. This is a really old building. It was absolutely gorgeous. So I'm hoping that you might get some information on that one.
Thank you. Any further public comment on this item?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Jen Spaller. My husband and I live directly across the street from 1335 Honor Oak Lane. First, regarding the 18 calls up there, I personally, from my home, I have 23 records of calls at home, so that's for the police only. We've also had 2 fires. One of them was started by 3, what I assume were aerosol can bombs. So there's a lot more with the Honor Oak. And the thing about Honor Oak is I hear that you're classifying kind of with the grant that there has to be certain income, but what about the houses that are sitting where owners are not being actually addressed by code enforcement? Because that is the situation that we were facing. First, we want to thank Councilman Boomgarden for caring enough and being brave enough to meet with our neighborhood beginning in May. Sorry, I can't see with this on. We were all frustrated at that point, and he heard us. Thanks to him, he was able to get done what we couldn't on our own for 14 months. Removing the target for crime in our neighborhood. While we all understand crime has increased the past few years, there is no excuse for a city to allow any neighborhood to live with trash properties clearly causing spikes in criminal activity without addressing it. And I'm not talking about the owner-occupied properties that are having problems with insurance companies. That's not the problem, because normally from what I've researched, those are moving along. And as she stated, you got issues with insurance companies or whatever. The engaged property owners are not the ones that I'm talking about. However, as someone who has been dealing with one of those problem properties and its owner for the last 14 months before Councilman Boomgarden got involved, none of the policies and procedures that code enforcement has now, the owner hadn't even been talked to by the city, and it had been 14 months after the first fire. And then it had been another, I think, additional 2 months after the second fire, and they occurred a year apart. When my husband went to code enforcement to make a report in March after the second fire, we were told that there had been no reported issues at 1335 Honor Oak Lane. However, when our neighborhood met with Councilman Boomgarden, it was discovered our neighbors had been calling code enforcement, wondering why nothing had happened or was happening with the burned out house on Honor Oak Lane. We first spoke to Councilman Boomgarden the end of May, 2 months after reporting the property. After we made our report to code enforcement, I constantly had to follow up and begin sending code enforcement messages every time I was contacting the owner on ongoing issues at that property. I was contacting the owner. Then I was letting code enforcement know that I was contacting the owner. By the time, thankfully, we got Councilman Boomgarden involved because he actually was the one that was able to get the house or the process moving, and the house actually came down in July of this year. Let's be honest, if Councilman Boomgarden didn't get involved, we'd still probably be dealing with this house. And until Council Boomgarden got involved, the code enforcement department wasn't proving that to be an untrue statement.
Can you just wrap it up real quick?
Sure. So basically for 16 months, our neighborhood had to live with, and my husband and I had to live across the street from 23 plus calls from us alone, calls of service to the police, 2 fires and 3 bombs is how I classify it. The reason why we're here today is because I don't see the responsibilities being taken for code enforcement not being involved. And I'm asking the council to please consider these issues before any kind of budget increase and deal with the issues within the department, because we were basically standing across the street from this building saying, hello, we need help, and nobody was paying attention until Councilman Boomgarden got involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comments on this item?
My name is Jackie Lance, and I live at 1545 Honor Oak Lane, and down the street from Jen. And I'm just not sure why it would require us getting our local councilman involved to get anything done. Just because we have a connection, we were able to have that happen. But what about everyone else in the community that doesn't have that connection? I don't know what kind of auditing or oversight needs to take place within the city to make sure that sort of thing doesn't happen again. If this was a private industry, it wouldn't be functioning anymore. It would be out of business. So I just want to say thank you to Mark for coming out and helping our neighborhood, and hopefully the city can kind of get things under control.
Thank you. Any further public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for action or discussion.
Through the mayor, I just want to correct one thing, and I hope you'll allow me to do that, was that the house didn't come down just because of me. It came down. It came down because you all cared enough about your neighborhood and took the opportunity to reach out. And then here at the city, we heard you. And while we didn't function on all 8 cylinders as fast as we should have by any means, and I think you've heard us all in a neighborhood meeting accept responsibility for that. I'm hopeful that from the challenges you all had to face, and I apologize for those, that we have come up with a better system that will provide other neighborhoods with the relief they need when they experience something like you all had to experience. A lot of that has to do with processes, and in any business, you can have all the processes on paper that you want, but if you're not executing on them, then things have a possibility or a reality of falling through the cracks. And this one surely fell through a 14 to 16 month crack. So I thank you for having the patience as we work through this and being a watchdog, if you will, and your persistence on behalf of your neighborhoods and your neighborhood and the city. I appreciate that. What I hope we take from this is what Mr. Moody, and I know Mr. Eden is up there as well, and the other members of code enforcement and our entire city staff is that when we have a situation that is impacting a neighborhood, that we act as quickly and legally as we possibly can, and to take into consideration those properties that may be in the process of an insurance problem or what have you. But at the same time, how long has that vacant house on 2nd Street been down there vacant like that? It's been a while too now, right?
And I have a February.
That's okay. I mean,
It's been about 6 months.
okay.
Not 6. I think it's sometime around February. And
So that residence has been it's been since around I think February of 23. Your comments, I know you said the owner of the property. I just recently spoke to the owner of the property, and it's a large property, and there are some insurance obstacles that she's dealing with, as well as it's a large job, and what they're intended to do with the demolition of that, and finding a contractor is, I think, quite cumbersome with that. So we're engaged with them, with that property owner.
I think that is the kind of responses that the citizens need, is, hey, look, we're on it, and then really being on it. And I'm sure I know you would be, Mr. Eden, but I think that too often we don't. In history, a burnt building was usually taken care of pretty quick. A lot of them were owner occupied, so there's definitely an incentive in getting those things taken care of. It's these, I don't want to characterize everything this way, but the absentee owner that has basically abandoned the building, it's now become an attractive nuisance for homeless or criminal activity or whatever, and we just can't have that. So to the point where you're talking about us as a city having to put aside, some money to help with that when it is necessary, I think we do need, as a council, to consider that, because we owe it to our neighborhoods. I don't want to be, none of us want to be in that situation where, someone looks at 1201 Civic Center Boulevard and wonders what the heck it's going on over there when they have constant complaints. I know I don't want to, as a citizen and as a council person. I know I don't believe anybody here that works for the city wants that as well. But that's kind of the impression we leave sometimes, is that we're not taking care of something, when in a little communication and maybe a little effort would help. So I appreciate the work that you've done. And again, processes are processes, and if they're not followed. So I have good confidence that what you have developed will work on a go forward basis. And I appreciate the effort in doing that.
Thank you, sir. Just a quick question, Ben. CDBG dollars, if we use that for something like abatement, can we still seek reimbursement from the property owner?
That's a good question. And so we'd have to look into how the funds are, because usually they're meant to be spent and put off the books. And so there are some options where we've seen CDBG funds used for rehab programs, where they go in and repair the building, and then it's owner occupied. So I believe yes, but I would have to get with staff and confirm with HUD. But we have used CDBG funds for first-time home buyer, and then you put a deed restriction on the property. So if it gets sold, then the money comes back in, but it goes back into that program. So there might have to be some restrictions that when the money comes back in, that they stay low income based. And so we probably have to dive into that, and we could definitely research that, so we're ready with the application when we come up for the program year.
All right, that would be my only real concern with that. Would be, if we're spending money to rehab a property that the owner, basically a deadbeat property owner in those cases, and we're having to take money from the entire community to cover one guy's property because he won't get his act together. If it's reimbursable, we can hit him for that and put a lien or whatever we need to do to reimburse. So that's an easier pill to swallow, rather than take away from the entire community for something else we would use that money for. Just speaking in principle here, I mean, it's still a good thing. I'm just trying to figure out how to make it work in here.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Through the mayor, one more question. I don't think that I think the CDBG funding would only be eligible in those areas where CDBG is eligible to be spent. We're still going to have to come up with some money for those areas. For instance, that aren't within a CDBG zone. Right.
Because the burns definitely are across the city. They're not focused just in a certain area. And so it's definitely something that would need to be considered.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. Well, I can certainly empathize with the folks over there on Hollyoak. This has been a long process. Personally, the one that's been a nuisance for me is the property right off of Plumas Street. And I've talked to Mr. Moody about that numerous times. And I think the first time that one burnt, this is the one behind the post office, was about 3 years ago. And then there was a second fire there. And I'm trying to wrap my head around this concept that we live in the state of California where we're so impacted by the lack of housing. Why wouldn't somebody be motivated to scrape that and build a new house? But that's simply not the reality. But hopefully, with this policy, we're pointed in the right direction. And with that, I'll bring it back to council for action.
Through the mayor, I'd like to move to approve staff's recommendations of A, B, and C for item 16.
Got a motion from Councilmember Boongarden and a second from Vice Mayor Harris. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Moving along to item number 17, consideration of ARCO AM/PM public convenient or necessity request. Presented once again by Ben Moody.
All right. So public convenience and necessity. So what we're talking about is we're talking about an ABC Type 21 license in order to sell beer, wine, and spirits at the proposed ARCO AM/PM on Harder. That is currently in process. And so many of you are familiar with this site. There's been a lot of planning entitlements lately in construction going. So that this site is located to the west of the Walmart shopping center in the Harder marketplace. And so it's the current parcel has a tentative subdivision map, and there's been some use permits associated with the drive-throughs for Raising Cane, and then also for Dutch Brothers to the north. And so, and then also the use permit for the gas station pumps out front of the ARCO. And so right now, this project is really in full speed to happen as far as being built. Right now, construction is going for this road, this knuckle along the frontage road, and then to come up around the site and modifications. And so, and then the ARCO plans themselves are being submitted. The design engineer is here and the owner for any specific questions. And so this was brought up early on with staff, just as far as the city's consideration and process regarding being able to consider this this public convenience and necessity determination for ABC, and really. And so it came up, and so with consideration of this use permit, staff actually put in a condition that, with the condition of the use permit, that if determined necessary by the Development Services Director to address the impacts of vagrancy, the city may require nighttime security provided with the operator's expense. And then also with the improvements to this, it's in a C3 commercial district, but there's lighting and garbage associated with the site. And so when staff looks at it, we feel that the allowed use is consistent with the zoning. And so that's an allowed use in the zoning. And with it being a commercial area, it's not directly neighbored by residential units that we think will have an impact from noise or off-hour additional use, that staff is recommending approval of that use. This one typically wouldn't come before us, but what's happening in my mind is, as I see more of these PCN requests, is that it happens based on our zoning. And so the commercial, we focus our commercial on the corridors in certain areas. And so the ABC, the way they issue permits, it's based on census tracts. So they say if the census tract, you're allowed to have 5 in this census tract. Well, the census tracts don't line up with the commercial corridor. And so where we allow this use in a commercial use. And so so this one, I believe there's 5 allowed in this census district. Currently, there's 5 in the district, so this would be one more in this census tract area. And so that's really what it is that they see that as that part of their business model to offer those items for sale. And they definitely can articulate any of the business operations or if any concerns that you may have to discuss regarding operations for the use of that. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. Do we have any comments from the public on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for discussion or action.
All right, Mayor. I still find that, given my previous life, I find it odd that we're selling cold beer at a gas station, but well, that's not the hill I want to die on right now. Don't feel bad. Texas has drive-through liquor stores, so let's. But I definitely move to approve. We'll be doing A, B, and C staff recommendations, please. No, I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong one. And I even have my glasses on. Number 17, move to approve staff's recommendation.
Got a motion from the vice mayor.
Second.
And a second from Councilmember Baumgarten. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries. I'm assuming that the owners are here today.
So long. You guys had a long wait.
That's all right.
You endured it.
I got to tell you, just being a resident here my whole life, that side of town, the amount of traffic, foot traffic, and I mean, you guys are going to kill it. So you got to be excited about this.
Yeah.
Welcome to District 2.
Thank you.
And
Okay, very good. Yeah.
oh wow,
Funny.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
thank you, Mr. Moody. Boy, he had a long night. Okay, future agenda items. This is an opportunity to discuss with the city manager about items that came up in the meeting that you would like to have brought back to council at a later date. Do we have any comments from the public? Do we have any public? Okay, seeing none. Reports and communication. We'll begin with the city manager's report.
So just a couple quick items. I just want to say thank you to the fire department and human resources. They facilitated a girls fire academy this last Saturday that included girls from freshman through senior. There were 16 participants. It was really amazing to see the transformation of the girls from when they got there to the end. And they did about 6 different drills with the fire department and really got a sense of what it would be to provide medical aid and then also extraction and, pull hose to fight a fire. So it was really great to see. It was our first one, and I hope that we have more in the future. And then this Friday is the grand opening ceremony for the Yuba-Sutter Meals on Wheels at the Senior Center at 1 p.m. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, city manager, and get better soon. City council reports. We'll start with Councilmember Baumgarten.
Just 2 quick things. I attended the strategic planning meeting with the rest of the council and city staff members, the department heads. Felt it was a productive meeting as we continue to look to the future. Also attended 2 9/11 ceremonies, one at the fire station here and one across the way at the memorial for the 9/11 incident over at the Sutter County Library. So that's it.
Thank you. Excuse me, Vice Mayor Harris.
Same thing, pretty light meetings this last couple of weeks. I too attended the strategic planning meeting. I think it was productive and the time was appreciated. Also good to hear about the Girls Fire Academy. That sounds really good. What a great opportunity for them. I'm sure they'll remember it forever, and hopefully we can make sure that's just the first of many, many more. So that's good news. Other than that, I'm good.
Thank you, sir. Looks like I'm up. I'm going to draw this out. Yeah. So I attended the JAC meeting where we talked about sector reports and went across, discussed legislation that is pending at the state capitol. Attended the city, the city citizen revenue ad hoc potential ad hoc meeting, which was informative to myself and to the citizens who participated. Also attended the strategy meeting with my colleagues here, the 9/11, also the observance at Station 1 on Clark Avenue. Sabufka, we're discussing potential grant for sediment removal at the confluence of the Yuba and the Feather, and also the city of Oroville has a new levee that they are excited that protects their downtown. Gil Sizer, we had an approval of expenditures. Their installation and programming of a monitoring station. We okayed up to $25,000 for that. Mosquito, surprise, surprise, the numbers are up because of the winter we just had. I believe they're up to 5 West Nile cases on that side of the river and also on this side of the river. They're expecting that to go as high as 20. In their model, and then we're also discussing the manager's evaluation and contract. Attended the Stampede kickoff for the Stampede season over at Vicky Ford, and then lastly, I attended Dr. Dotson's presentation out at Yuba College, which was well attended by our community, where she asked us for our input, and she showed us essentially what the programs they provide, and I'm tired. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at PlumasLakeSelfStorage.com.